touch on your background just a little bit. Headspace marketing. So I do know that you guys help clients find the advantages of putting their brands in Quebec. How would you be able to like expand on that a bit more?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm French Canadian, and I've been working in advertising for 30 years. So I came to Toronto in 1983. And when I came to Toronto in 1983, working for a large agency called Young and Rubicam, as an account exec on General Foods, which is now a part of Kraft Food, and on Procter & Gamble. We always worked on packaged goods. And I was always the French Canadian in the room in Toronto. And so what happens is over the years, even though my career progressed and I moved to more senior roles in various large agencies, I was always the French Canadian in the room who kept being asked, is this going to work in Quebec? What do you think about this for Quebec? Would this work in French? Is there, in your mind, you know, an opportunity in Quebec? Should we do anything different in Quebec? So you keep being asked this question, and at some point you have this desire to start your own company anyway, because you know, it's nice to work for large agencies, but it's also nice to work for a smaller thing that you own, that you build, that you create from scratch. And so when I decided to launch my own firm 8 years ago, I thought, you know, I can start an ad agency because I've worked on the, you know, English side and been involved in Toronto for 30 years. And I have a lot of contacts, a lot of friends, and a lot of very good potential partners. But then I thought, you know what, that's a very broad area to be in. There are a lot of agencies, there are a lot of big agencies, global agencies, and there are a lot of small boutiques. And there's one born almost every day. And I thought, that's a very competitive environment to be in. And I thought, let's find something, let's apply to this business the same principles that I would apply to our clients, which is find a niche, find an area that you can be more competitive in, more differentiated, own a space basically. And it was a no-brainer for me to think that perhaps there would be an opportunity to offer an expertise on the Quebec market for advertisers, marketers in English Canada, in the United States, who are either entering the Quebec market or are already there but wish to perform better there, or are there but want to do the bare minimum that's required from an investment standpoint, but not necessarily go too far, but do what's right because they have a presence there, their products are distributed there, or they have retail outlets there. And so that was the idea behind Headspace, which is to provide basically what it says on the business card here, the knowledge to build brands in Quebec. Now, how we do that, maybe that's one of your questions. We do that in a variety of ways, but the core business idea is to basically deliver marketing solutions for our clients as it relates to the Quebec market.
Okay. Is Headspace currently the only agency that does this at the moment?
Well, to my knowledge, we're the only agency that has this particular business model in that we are Toronto-based to deliver solutions for the Quebec market. We have an office in Montreal, but we're Toronto-based. Project management is here, I'm here, strategy, and so on. That's not to say that there are not agencies who are able to deliver these solutions out of Montreal and Quebec City. There are agencies in Montreal, very large agencies as well, Sidley, Cossette, and I mean a lot of the global agencies have offices in Montreal. But no one, to my knowledge, seems to be focusing solely on the Quebec market out of Toronto. So you have agencies in Montreal who would be quite happy to have national assignments. We don't look for national assignments. We're more like a surgical strike. You know, we go in and we say, what's going on with Quebec? That's it.
There it is. Université Laval.
Yeah, you say that very well. You speak French.
Yeah. Well, I was in French immersion now.
On devrait faire ça en français, donc. Oui. Université Laval is in Quebec City, and while I'm from Montreal, I went to Quebec City for a very specific reason. There was a unique opportunity in Quebec to create a program that would be, I guess, at the time, you know, you got to go back now, 33 years ago. You know, the program you're in at Mohawk that are, you know, built specifically for careers in advertising. Back then, there were very few universities that offered anything like that. In fact, there were none in Quebec. You either had to go into a business school or you had to go in another specialty. So what I understood then, back then, and think it was the right call, is that I didn't want to do, I wanted to go in advertising. I was one of those crazy fools who wanted to do a career in this. And since the course didn't exist, the fully built course, it did not exist, the bachelor degree, I created my own bachelor degree. So what I did is Laval offered a 1 year. I could go for 1 year in the business school.
Okay.
But I could skip all the accounting courses and all the stuff I didn't care much for. In hindsight, probably I should have. But anyway, but focus only on the marketing side of the business school curriculum. So retail marketing and things like that.
Okay.
Then the second year I went to psychology. Completely changed the school I was in. Now I'm doing 1 year in psychology, but instead of doing psychology and physiopsychology and all the stuff that people who want to go into psychotherapy and things like that will do, I did anything that would relate to attitudes and behaviors, and all that, again, thinking in terms of consumer behavior. And then the third year, I went to the communication school, and I didn't do all the journalism stuff, but I did more the theory of communication. So I created a bachelor degree that I thought had the components required for advertising, which is marketing, communications, and consumer psychology.
Oh, do they currently have the program now?
I have no idea.
No? They should just name it after you.
They probably should have picked that and created a program. You're absolutely right.
So as you mentioned before, you were an account director at Young and Rubicon. And you've made your way up through a lot of different positions throughout the year, and now you are currently the president of Headspace. So would you be able to tell me about your journey to where you are now?
My journey? I'm tired. No. My journey. Well, you know, you work hard, but also you get lucky. I mean, it's basically my journey is that you need to be passionate about this. There are a lot of people who are interested in this industry. There are a lot of people who want to work in it, and but I think that a lot of people are attracted to it without necessarily understanding what is really behind it all. And what is really behind it all is a bunch of clients who, frankly, while they care about the marketing communication aspect of the business, it's one part that is a bit of a gamble many times. One that they feel, you know the line, I know I'm wasting half my budget, but I don't know which half. They feel there's a bit of a hocus pocus aspect to it. There are bigger than life personalities in the creative side, for example. Not only on the creative side, but and now more recently, I'd say with the last 10 years or so, with the arrival of social media, digital, and all that, there's even more mystery around all of this. Do I really need to be on Facebook? Is this really effective, these things, and all that? So clients, by and large, are not necessarily, I would say, trusting of their agency partners as much as perhaps they once were. And so as a result, I think those who succeed are those who never lose sight of that and adopt a business approach to the work we do. While it's creative, while it's about fun ideas, while it's about capturing people's imagination and creating buzz and all of that stuff, at the end of the day, it's serious business. And I think clients respond best to people on the agency side who they view as a business partner. And so if you take that approach from the very beginning in your career, to not lose sight that the person who's paying your bills, the person who's looking at your work and assessing whether or not they're satisfied with your work, they're looking at it from a pure business standpoint. They don't want to be famous. They don't want to be known as having done the campaign that changed the world. They want results. And that's why even the industry that we're in has also woken up to that. Much more so, I think, in the last 20 years or so. You think of the Cassies, the Canadian Advertising Success Stories. I mean, that's a great model after the Effies in the States. But that's a great idea for the industry, because it's an award that doesn't say, this was brilliant, because it's so cool, and people talked about it, and people collected the ads, and no, it's not that. Or a bunch of creative people in Cannes sipping champagne thought it was very nice. No, it's about effectiveness. It's about results, and that's what clients are looking for. So, long way to answer your question. That the way I think my journey is that, I was always mindful of the fact that we're in a creative business, always mindful of the fact that we need to constantly reinvent ourselves, be on top of trends, consumer trends, but also media trends, particularly more recently. But to never lose sight of the fact that we're dealing in a business, and this is about business results.
It's really tough. It's really competitive out there for those creative guys.
Well, that's the thing, is that you may have great creative ideas, but they may not be very good at persuading anyone to buy a bar of soap. And in a way, that's why I like packaged goods. You know what I mean when I say packaged goods? Like
chips or...
Well, yeah, food products, health and beauty aids, like the products that are packaged, as opposed to automotive or apparel or retail and all that. Because packaged goods, by definition, is not particularly sexy. Shampoo, chips, to your point. We do a lot in the bakery area here. We're in the middle now doing a TV campaign for Country Harvest bread. It's whole grain bread. Not a lot you can do with that. Yet you need to be creative about it, and you need to be smart about it. And so if you're a creative person who just wants to do the very cool thing with cool photography, with cool music, and not everybody gets to do the 60-second spot for the Super Bowl. A lot of us get to do the stuff you're going to see on Global tonight during prime time that talks about new shredded wheat with maple syrup. I mean, there's room. This is about. It's interesting. Sidley in Montreal, but with offices elsewhere, organizes a conference called C2 Montreal, which stands for 2Cs, which is creativity and commerce. And that's a great, simple. Just think of those two terms. It's about commerce. If you want to do creativity, then open it, draw and open an art gallery, or write songs, or be even a photographer or a director. But even as a director, when you go and hire a commercial director, even though you're hiring him or her for their art and their vision to tell a story filmically and all that, you're still hiring them to do 30 seconds with a beginning, a middle, and an end of something that will most likely go into pretty harsh quantitative research prior to going to full production. And we will scrutinize every half second on that thing and decide that the brand is not close enough to the camera, so we can't read the descriptor under the new, with maple syrup. Well, even as a director, you better be ready to deal with the commercial aspect of it.
Yeah, like the comments that you would receive back, and
you've got clients. You're not on your own creating your art as a sculptor in a studio somewhere for just your personal joy and hoping that people will fall in love with it.
It's all about the clients.
It's a business.
Yeah. Who do you interact with the most in the office or clients?
So I will deal with the VP marketing of Weston Bakeries. I will deal with the VP marketing of Molson. But we do a lot of work for Toronto-based agencies that do not have a Quebec partner. Quebec agency.
Okay.
So my interactions are also with the heads of those agencies. So I will talk to the president of Juniper Park often, because that's a big client for us. I will talk to the president of John Street very often.
So you interact a lot with other agencies?
Yeah, because if you're at Juniper Park, you have a great agency here based in Toronto, you have great clients, but a lot of your assignments require French. Now, they don't require a separate campaign for Quebec or a completely separate approach, but they require that the work be done in such a way that it is effective in the Quebec market. So they hire us. We're a subcontractor to those agencies. So that's a big part of our business.
How often do you leave the office?
Well, we have an office in Montreal, so I'm on porter to Montreal every couple of weeks for a few days. So I try to spend as much time. We do a lot of our production down there, so we use local production facilities. When we produce TV commercials, radio spots, and all that, we use Montreal studio. We're shooting photography today in Montreal, so the art director, producer are working. They're calling us. We're checking. We're getting the photos. So much now is facilitated by Skype and being able to just send QuickTimes and JPEGs for approval. The days when you had to travel to be physically there to do so much, of course we need to be there, but not as often or as,
There's other ways for communication.
Yeah. And for us, our angle has never been I didn't build this little company on the basis of geography, saying, it's more convenient to work with us because we're in Toronto. But there's no doubt that it is a big asset. There's always the reality that Quebec is forgotten. It's easy to be in Toronto and to think, yeah, everything's done in English and everything is national and all that. And then, they forgot Quebec. Yeah. And so by being here, we're able to be involved much earlier in the process. So, a large client for us is CIBC. Well, CIBC has branch network in Quebec and they require everything done in French. But it's easy for them to forget that as they're sitting in Toronto developing the fall campaign with the TV, the web, the print, the brochures, the posters and all that, no one's thought of Quebec. And we're here early, so the head of project management here, Manon Varin, is in a meeting yesterday morning at 8 o'clock downtown with CIBC, reviewing the requirements for the fall. So it's a lot easier to flag right now, hey, on this thing, we're going to have to think twice about how we do this for Quebec. So that's an advantage for our clients, is to be physically here. Almost more important to be here than to be in Montreal. I mean, a good example of that is when we started the company, we were approached by Sleep Country Canada. And, Christine McGee, why buy a mattress anywhere else? Well, they've got a very successful formula for English Canada. The president of the company on television or on radio saying this week's it's the blah blah Sealy Posturepedic sale. The sale ends on Tuesday at 9 o'clock. That kind of, what I'm talking about. So that's a formula that's worked really well for them in English Canada. Has built the Sleep Country Canada brand and an amazing retail success story. Well, then they decided to expand into Quebec because there was no more room to grow, I guess, in English Canada, and they wanted to be national. And so they did so by acquiring a small retailer in the west end of Montreal called Dormez-vous. And we were called in, and we told them what we thought about the opportunities in Quebec. And we told them about the adopt, adapt, create, Maybe you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but you have to dig deeper, review the research, conduct some research, and so on. But on the surface, maybe the idea works that this platform, this approach that you have that's been so successful in English Canada could work in Quebec. They disappeared for a few months. We never heard back from them. And while they were doing that, while they were silent, they were in Montreal meeting with several agencies. And all these agencies told them, it's different here. The president's spokesperson thing doesn't work. You need a local comedian. There has to be humor and this and that. And they went on with all these different, somewhat cliche ideas about what works in Quebec. And then the client came back to us and said, we heard all this. We'd rather work with you and simply adapt what we've done. And so even though Christine McGee doesn't speak French, there was a local VP over there who spoke good French, who was good on camera. And so with a different brand, Dormez-vous, not Sleep Country, we applied the same approach. The cheesy jingle, and the signature is different than why buy a mattress anywhere else, but it's essentially the same approach. And it's been hugely successful for them. So I think that I use that example often because it's nothing sexy, first of all. It's not the kind of stuff that many of the creative people would die to work on. But from a business standpoint, it's a huge success. And from a proof that we have a model that works, I think it's just a great success, a great case study for us because it says, sometimes what you've done elsewhere works just fine in the Quebec market.
What advice would you give me to eventually get to where you are right now?
Wow. Your question is, how do you get ahead? How do you
advance?
I think that the first thing that I would say to you is something that was said to me 30 years ago, or 25 years ago, by the head of a global agency in New York when we were there in training. I was very young and we were there for 6 weeks, all expense paid, at some kind of University of Advertising down on Madison Avenue at Yonge and Rubicam. And the chairman of the company came at the very end when we were given our little diplomas after 6 weeks. And these were people from around the world, from Y&R offices around the world. It was a great time. But he made a short speech. There was 20 of us. But he said something that always stayed with me. He could have said a million things about what to do going forward and how you go ahead with going back to your countries and your offices. But what he said to us was, stay open, be intellectually curious. And I never forgot that because I think it's so true. You can only learn so much at Mohawk about this business. You can only learn so much from the textbooks that are written. Some of them are more like publicity books than they are, or vanity books, I guess, than they are real textbooks, but certainly a lot of books on branding and a lot of books on marketing communications that are worth reading. But what you will really benefit from is reading the business papers, by being interested in everything you can get your hands on. And in my days, I used to go to the library. Now you Google anything.
Yeah.
And there's so many sources online, from Brand Channel to Ad Age Online to you got to be eating that for breakfast basically, because what at the end of the day an employer will be looking for, and a client ultimately is looking for, is someone across the table who can tell him things or her things that they don't know in a specific area. So you need to know your stuff, and knowing the stuff is not going to come through, is not going to be from school. That's fine, but that's not it. That's not all of it, far from that. And I think even Wayne would acknowledge that. It's hands-on experience, but the hands-on experience in agencies is not what it used to be. There's no more training. And I mean that. There used to be training. So if you started with Ogilvy and Mather in Toronto, you had school in the morning, X many days a week, where senior people from the agency would come in with acetates back then and teach, but hands-on cases about the business. So you would learn from people who were in the industry. There were courses, and they still exist, like CAP course, the Canadian Advertising Certified Professional, whatever it's called, given by the ICA, the Institute of Canadian Advertising. So they were industry courses. But the hands-on coaching and training took place in agencies. I don't know of any agency today that takes young recruits and actually teaches them in a formal way. What I mean by that, with courses, we've developed a curriculum. I know McLaren McCann for a while had something called McLaren U, and so there were like course modules that had been developed on everything from direct mail to PR to media to digital media to things like writing the creative brief and things like that. So mirroring a little bit what's probably being done at Mohawk, but doing it with real life clients and issues at the agency. But that kind of training doesn't necessarily happen in as systematic a way as it used to. So as a result, someone needs to be taking that. You need to take charge of that yourself and be. So my advice to you is, suck it all up. Take everything you can, and what you're doing right now. Taking advantage of opportunities like this to hear someone talk about it and ask questions. So that's what matters, and I think that is a big step, because that will get recognized quickly in an interview process. That will get recognized quickly once you're on the job, because what you want is a client to say, really like Adrian, he's curious, keeps asking questions, he doesn't ask the same question twice, he gets the answer, moves on to the next thing. I want that guy, when is he getting promoted so he's more involved in my business? That's what you want. That's what you want. Showing up won't do it. You got to do a whole lot more than that. But you know what? I don't know what I'm describing here is unique to this industry. I think if we're a lawyer, we'd do the same thing. I mean, an engineer. You got to know your stuff. But I think that more so in our industry, perhaps because we're in this consulting mode. My only point to you is, it won't be given to you on a silver platter, either in a course or in a formal training within an agency. You're going to have to be curious. I keep telling my guys to do that every day. Read the paper. Read the paper. Because our clients read the paper. They sure expect you to know a bit about what's going on in the business world. Because it's a business. It's not creative. Yeah, it's important, but...
And I've actually decided to do the business side of the advertising. I am a little bit creative, but I know I don't have vast amounts of ideas that I can just keep going. So.
But you just said two things. I'm a little bit creative, but I don't have a vast amount of ideas. You know what? I know a lot of people who are very creative. They're art directors. They know how to make something beautiful. They know how to pick a font. They know how to select the right photographer. They know how to create something that is going to be stunning. Or not stunning, that's going to be effective and be a good representation of what the brand's image and personality is about. But they don't have an idea. They're good craftspeople. They can pick a font, they can pick an art, a shot, but they don't have a business idea. And then I know people who are fantastic writers, and they can craft beautiful words to tell a story. But they don't really know why the story is a good story to tell for that brand. And so, being in business, but having a creative understanding is a good place to be, as opposed to being the creative people. Because the creative people will relate to you because they'll say, he's not just a suit. What I mean by that is he's not just a guy who's worried about the deadline and the budgets and the client is calling and I gotta go and no, he gets the subtleties of what we're trying to craft here. He can be turned on by it. This is so sharp. This is so smart. This looks so good. This feels right. He can feel creative. So creative people will appreciate that because you're kind of a person who then filters their work and validates the work for them, and they feel like he can, when he goes with the bag and shows the stuff, he'll represent us well. He'll sell it because he feels it too, and he's creative in his own way. He didn't draw it, he didn't write it, but he gets it. Clients will look at you as, he's like me, he's a business guy. He knows I've got deadlines and budgets and objectives and issues to deal with and all that, but he gets this. He has the flair. I trust him. I trust him. It's going to look good. It's going to feel good. It's going to work. So this distinction that's made between business and creative is, in my mind anyway, an arbitrary distinction. It's a distinction that we have made, perhaps some creative people have, because they think they're in some kind of ivory tower and we're the creative people. Well, bullshit. Bullshit. You won't last if you think that way. The best creative people are business people in this industry. They're the ones who are able, I mean, you think of the smart, I mean, Gary Proud, bless his soul, when he was chairman of Scally McKay Sloan for many years, he's a creative guy, but he was president and chairman of his agency. A business guy. Clients trusted that because he knew he was building it. Jeffrey Roche, he's not an easy guy to deal with. He's a creative guy. But he could have a conversation with the head of Mercedes-Benz Canada about business and about what's going on the floor and whether the cars are selling, and he's a business guy. And so it's an arbitrary distinction, creative and business. And it's one that we've also created a bit because we needed to create departments. Okay, the account people, but think about what the agency business has been struggling for years. Having the account planners as this bridge between the consumer and the suits and the creative people. All of this stuff, they're just attempts, or media creativity. Oh, bring the creativity to the media function. All these newfangled roles and titles, they're all weird ways of trying to ensure that commerce and creativity are coexisting, because that's what we do. So don't feel that you're ruling out creative if you're going business. Just like those who are going creative, if they rule out business, they're in trouble, in my opinion. Good luck. They'll work in the studio. They'll cut foam core, but they won't know what the business context is. You gotta have both.
Well, thank you so much for that.
It's my pleasure.
It was a pleasure for me.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. So I hope you've got everything you need.
Yes.